Good morning, everybody. Happy Easter. Happy Easter. Great to see you. You all are the, I don't want to do this, but you 9 o'clock people, you're like the real highway people. Am I right? The 11 o'clock people, they're like, should I go? Should I not? I'm going to wake up late and eat donuts. Don't tell them I said that. So, one of the weird things that you might not know about being a pastor is Sundays I have to get up really early. And so what I try to do is I try to sneak out as best as I can, and oftentimes it doesn't work. And so my wife will send me a text, and she's like, guess who woke up right after you woke up to go to church? And it's my son, my 6-year-old son, Jude. And this morning, we just had a little different text exchange because I snuck out really early, and she texted. And so we were like, he is risen. I was like, oh, Jude has risen indeed at 6:15 a.m. Have we never met before? My name is Adam, pastor here at Highway. And before we get into our Easter sermon time, I want to point out something we're going to start next week. We're going to do a 4-week sermon series, and it's really based on this idea of what, I don't know about you, but a lot of people talk to me, whether it's young adults or friends of mine who have sort of distanced themselves from the church. Well, this phrase of like, I love Jesus, but... Rarely do I talk to someone who's either agnostic or uninterested in church who says, I don't like Jesus. Usually it's like, I love Jesus, but, and there's some weeks we're going to cover, his people are crazy. I'll get that a lot. I'm not sure about his dad. His dad sure seems a little mean. Some people just like, I love Jesus. I don't really need the church, though. What do I need that for? And then I love Jesus, but man, he's let me down. So for the next 4 weeks, we're going to talk about these topics, and so these are very relevant here in Silicon Valley. So love to see you in the upcoming weeks. If you know someone who is dealing with this kind of stuff, maybe you could bring them. Okay, let's dive in together. The year is 2008, and it's my 1-year anniversary. Don't do the math there. We've just moved to the suburbs of Chicago. So I had a perfect anniversary plan a few weeks before this new job. Yeah, this is young lovebirds there. We had literally used all of our money. We had overdrafted our checking account, and we were eating cans of corn for dinner. But now, with the new job, we were loaded because of this prestigious job at a church. And so my perfect plan was booking a nice meal, a nice hotel in downtown Chicago like real adults. And we were not real adults, though. We were young and inexperienced and had never lived in a big city. So we packed carry-on bags and decided to take the train into the city like real city adults. Here's where the first crack in my perfect plan appeared. So I grew up in a tiny town with one stoplight. Big cities were like foreign to me. So when I booked our hotel, when I looked at the map, it looked really close to the train station. Easily walkable for two young lovebirds. I want you to look at this picture. You can see. Look how close it is. Like the train station is up there, the hotel. It goes by Soldier Field, best football team in America. And so it looks super close. We get off the train, and we're pulling our bags. We're walking under the skyscrapers. And after a few blocks, Lori says, how much farther? My arm's getting tired. And here's where another crack in my perfect plan appeared. These were the ancient days before smartphones, so I pulled out my printed MapQuest page, and I was like, I think it's just a couple more blocks. But it wasn't. It was many more blocks. In fact, it was 3.2 miles. Apple Maps estimates that it would take 1 hour and 20 minutes to walk there. But Apple Maps doesn't consider carrying bags into the equation, and it doesn't consider the fact that Lori was wearing flip-flops. So here's the next crack. The Chicago wind was roaring that day. No joke. It was like straight into our faces. So at some point we stop and take a break, and I'm just like, only a couple more blocks. And remember, there's no Waymos or Ubers, and maybe you're thinking, well, why didn't you get a taxi? Remember, I grew up in a town with one stoplight. People warned me about taxis and taxi drivers. They were scary. So we just kept walking. Eventually, it all falls apart because I turned my face covered in Chicago dust, and I looked down at my wife's feet, and both of her feet are bleeding. I made her feet bleed on our 1-year anniversary. Our faces are sandpapered by the wind. Our arms are shaking. We're exhausted. I had hoped, I had planned for a perfect celebration, but eventually all of these cracks broke the perfect plan into pieces. So this morning, my question for you is what plans, what stories, what dreams, what hopes have you had, and they're starting to crack apart? Or maybe they've already broken completely. A plan for how your kids will behave and succeed. A plan for your career, your dream job. A plan for your marriage. A plan for your finances. A plan for your physical health. But instead of going according to plan, we see a little crack, then another. Before you know it, the plans are collapsing. Now, one of the hard things about the Easter story is we all know the ending. So it's hard for us to remember how broken the plan seemed to be for the disciples of Jesus. And so for a second, we just want to try to put ourselves in this moment with them, to feel deeply the cracking of these hopes. So Luke writes a story about this very moment, saying, 2 disciples were traveling to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem, and they were talking to each other about everything that had happened. So we see two followers. They've been in Jerusalem. Now they are headed back from the action. It's more than 3.2 miles. Thankfully, they're not carrying carry-on bags. And as they walk, a stranger appears. And the stranger says, "What are you talking about?" as you walk along. And they stopped, and their faces are downcast. The things about Jesus of Nazareth, because of his powerful deeds and words, he was recognized by God and all the people as a prophet. But our chief priests and our leaders handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. We had hoped. We had hoped he was the one who would redeem Israel. All of these things happened 3 days ago. So if we can, let's just be there with them for a second. They had hoped. They had become followers of Jesus, and back then, that cost something. First century Jewish life, the hope for a Messiah was everywhere. It was told in the Passover story every single year. God got us out of Egypt. God will get us out of this too. And this was Rome, under the boot of the empire. The taxes that bled you. Soldiers could commandeer your house or your donkey. And to that world, this whisper started. Something is happening in Galilee. A carpenter from Nazareth was teaching like nobody had ever taught. He ate with the wrong people. He touched lepers. He told stories that got under your skin. And then there were the things you couldn't explain. Whispers of supernatural miracles and impossible actions. So maybe this was really the one finally. When he rode into Jerusalem on that donkey, the crowd went crazy. Hosanna, save us now. Please, now. The 2 disciples, they'd sacrificed for this movement. They had believed. But then came Friday, and God didn't intervene. The same God who parted the Red Sea, who had called fire down for Elijah, just nothing. Silence. 3 days of silence. So 7 miles with their faces downcast. We don't see that they were angry at God. They're not raging at God. They're just down. And then right there in the middle, this sentence that carries so much weight. We had hoped. We had hoped. This is the past perfect tense of the verb hope. It's meaning something hoped for, and now it's gone. Not fulfilled. Not meeting expectations. We had hoped. We had hoped to get pregnant, but it didn't happen. We had hoped this would be the year the career finally turned a corner, We had hoped we'd feel more alive by now, like more of ourselves. We had hoped our parents would get healthy. We had hoped our faith would feel more certain by this point in our lives, not less. Just this past week in our family, there were multiple things that happened, and they're not big in the grand scheme of things, but things that we had not hoped for or expected, and they created cracks in the story and cracks in our emotions. But today is the day we remember, and we cling to, and we remind each other, and we trust in this truth that the story is not over. Because, of course, the stranger walking with the two men was Jesus. It's this subtle, beautiful paradox. Their faces are downcast because their hope in the Messiah is gone, and literally right in front of them was a new hope. So Jesus teaches them, and then he joins them for dinner. And Luke says, after he took his seat at the table with them, he took the bread, he blessed, and he broke it, and he gave it to them. And then their eyes were open, and they recognized him. But he disappeared from their sight. And they said to each other, weren't our hearts on fire when he spoke to us along the road and when he explained the scriptures for us? And they got up right then, and they returned to Jerusalem, and they found 11 and their companions gathered together, and they were saying to each other, the Lord really has risen. And then the two disciples described what had happened along the road and how Jesus had made known to them as he broke the bread. The Lord really has risen. And their script and their plans, their expectations had cracked and broken, but it was in these cracks that came a new story and a new hope. And it changed the movement completely, because instead of Jesus being just being a political savior, rescuing Israel from the empire, he became so much more. He wasn't just bringing one small story back to life. He was bringing all of creation back to life, declaring that death does not and cannot win. All souls, all things, all death, all pain, all injustice restored, made new, alive, renewal. So for followers of Jesus, Easter is so important because it's sort of our whole faith in a nutshell. Hope is never lost. When politicians take the Lord's name in vain and they fight wars instead of peace, when people spew hatred, when our bodies are attacked by cancer cells, when the world trembles from fear at the latest technology, when we lose our jobs, when we're misunderstood, when we keep messing up and we keep making mistakes, hope is never lost. We believe in a king who brings things back to life. But we know on this side of life, we'll never fully see this restored kingdom. In this broken world, we'll experience cracks in the road. So quickly, just a couple of things to remember about these cracks, okay? The first thing to remember is this: we must mind the cracks. Mind the gap, mind the cracks. There's a guy named Paul Baxter, and he went to his doctor a few years back for what he described as a standard winter cold. Routine stuff. They referred him to a respiratory clinic, and the doctor said he could see something in his lung, something small and orange. And when they pulled it out, everyone was shocked because it was a Playmobil traffic cone from a toy train set. Paul had apparently swallowed this as a 7-year-old, had been living in his lung for 40 years. It's a real story. 40 years he had had chest infections over and over again, and respiratory issues, and the whole time there was this tiny orange traffic cone just sitting there at the bottom of his lung doing its thing. Now, most of us are not walking around with Playmobil toys in our lungs, hopefully. But I do think most of us are walking around with something we've never properly named or attended to. Maybe it's some old pain that got lodged somewhere deep and it just stayed. Maybe it's a grief that we bypassed, or a loneliness we got so used to we stopped noticing it. Or maybe it's a crack in our faith that we ignored, a marriage that's been quietly struggling for years. We just told ourselves it's fine. And we say, it's just stress. Just a season. Just a standard winter cold. And our body keeps sending signals, little chest infections, things that flare up and then settle down just enough so we can convince ourselves we're okay until we're not. So pain is information. Cracks are information. They're telling you something is happening. Something needs attention. Something underneath the surface requires care. And when we just rush past them, and Christians, we do this. We slap a spiritual bumper sticker over them, right? And we just keep moving. We don't make them go away. We just lose the chance to understand what they're trying to say. So this morning, I just want to pause for a second before we continue and go further. Just think with me. Take a moment of stillness. Is there something in you right now that you've just been calling a standard winter cold? Something you've been maybe numbing yourself so you don't think about it or feel it? Is there a pain that you've been ignoring? You don't have to do anything with it right now. You just want to notice it. Let it be named, at least for yourself and then to Jesus. That's a vital step for us as Christians, not to rush past the cracks and the pain. We mind the cracks and pay attention. Those push down hurts. And then the second thing is we realize that each crack is a new place for life. There's this French artist who calls himself MMM, and he calls his art flacking. And he takes cracks and potholes and broken parts of the sidewalk, and then he turns them into something new. So I'm going to show you a quick video and some photos of what he does. You can check this out. I want to show you some photos as well. It's beautiful, isn't it? He says, a pothole tells a story that perfection will never know. A pothole has been through weather and change and breaking, and he doesn't work in perfection, but instead he works by taking cracks and turning them into something new. Taking one story and turning it into a new one. It's beautiful, isn't it? So good. One time when Jesus was teaching about his upcoming death, he said, I assure you that unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it can only be a single seed. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. The seed doesn't crack open because something went wrong. It cracks open because that's the only way it becomes what it was always meant to be. You know, this terrible 3-mile anniversary walk for Lori and I, you know, it turned into one of our favorite memories. We did a lot more date nights in Chicago, and every time we'd relive that one. You're like, remember when your feet were bleeding? I'm so sorry. But we just laugh about it. It was a great memory. And that's the way it is sometimes, right? Stories aren't meant to be perfect. With no cracks or detours, a human life is the same way. It's imperfect. But resurrection is a reminder that cracks are not the end of the story. Something new, something beautiful can grow again. A worn-out caretaker, endlessly caring for her parents, starts a caretaker support group to support others like her, and they finally feel that they are not alone. A parent who lost a child to gun violence creates a national advocacy group for safe gun laws. Doesn't fix her pain, but hopefully might save future kids. A woman who has struggled for years with addiction gets sober and then spends the next 2 decades sitting in church basements with other people who are just starting the walk that she's already gone through. A man gets laid off from a tech job and starts showing up and teaching basic computer skills to seniors, recent immigrants. The crack isn't fixed or all made better, but it becomes a place for new life. And Easter is not promising a tidy ending. The disciples still lived in a Roman-occupied world on Monday morning. The cracks in the sidewalk don't disappear when M&M fills them. They're still there. They're just transformed. That's what we believe, what we stake everything on, what we come back to every year on this Sunday is that death does not win. Not the death of a dream, the death of a relationship or season or a version of yourself you love. And then not even actual, physical, irreversible, final death. A little over a year ago, at my physical, my doctor showed me some numbers and very gently said, well, there's some concerning things here, especially for someone your age. And I was like, for someone my age? What do you mean? And she said, well, at your age, you need to start paying attention to these kind of things. And sometimes I feel like I'm still that young lovebird that we saw in the picture, but I remember life keeps moving on. And this year, I've taken things a bit seriously, and I've tried to watch what I'm eating and to exercise more regularly. And it's great. I feel better. But no amount of Whole Foods or anti-wrinkle cream or plastic surgery or wellness routine will stop the inevitable. Eventually, our body will crack apart. And I know some of you in this room, you understand this more than others this season. Your body is showing these inevitable signs. But Easter has the audacity, and our King has the audacity to say, this is not the end. The story doesn't end when our bodies crack apart. Death does not have the last word in this world and in the next. So I want us to just think about those two disciples one more time. They walked 7 miles away from everything they had hoped for, and they're tired and defeated, faces down, and then somewhere on that road, before they understood anything, before they could explain it, something started burning in their chest. And they didn't know it was resurrection yet. They just knew something felt against all reason. It felt like hope. And then the bread broke and their eyes were open, and they got up, maybe in the dark and tired legs, and they walked back toward everything they'd run from, not because someone told them to or they had it all figured out, but when you encounter the risen Jesus, you can't stay where you are. And that's the promise of Easter. Not that your life will be crack-free, not that the road will be smooth or the plan will hold or the people you love will stay healthy. That's not the promise. The promise is that he is on the road with you, the one walking beside you in the hardest stretch, close enough to make your heart burn even while your face is downcast. He was in the crack of a borrowed tomb on a silent Saturday when every hope seemed finished. He's in the cracks of your life right now. You may not be able to see it yet. The disciples couldn't see it on the road either, but their hearts were burning, and that was enough. So wherever you are today, whatever crack has opened this year or this week or even in the past day, you are not walking alone. I want to invite you to close your eyes with me, and I'm going to pray for us. I want to invite you just to hold up and bring whatever that crack, whatever that pain is, whether it's been ignored for a while or you've known about it, and just to bring it to Jesus today. And Jesus, we come to you on Easter, and it can feel so celebratory. We're glad for that. But then we also remember it's not all tidy. It's not all perfect and cleaned up. We all come in here with our own pains and our own cracking of our plans and our expectations. And so we want to bring them and name them and lay them down at your feet this morning. And so I want to pray for a group of people in this room that maybe have lost hope or they are about to lose hope. And I want to pray for your supernatural, restoring hope. I want to pray that you would bring them a glimpse that you would help their hearts burn again for this story, for this narrative that death does not win. I want to pray for a group of people in here that are physically just feeling the pain and the aches and anxieties of our humanness. Maybe bodies breaking a little bit, maybe a sickness. I pray that you would bring a burning in their hearts. I pray that you would help them see that death does not have the last word. I pray for healing as well. We believe you are the supernatural Messiah who has done miracles. And finally, I want to pray for a group of people that are skeptic, maybe. Maybe just come to a place of doubting even this whole thing. Jesus, I pray that you would reach into their hearts, burn something in them. Help them see that they are not alone on this road, that you walk with them, even if they don't see it right now. So would you open our eyes to who you are? Amen.